Hello, I'm Kirtana, the technical author for Anbox Cloud, and today I bring you the highlights of our latest 128.0 release. This is a feature release with lots of new and shiny features that we have been promising to deliver in the last few months. Before we start going through what's new with Anbox Cloud, I would like to remind you to check the requirements for using Anbox Cloud if you are a new user. And if you've been with us for a while now, check out the component versions for exact revisions and versions of the various artifacts that are part of the release. Now, let's dive into what's new with this release. If you've been following our releases and videos, you already know that we had an alpha release for authentication and authorization using OIDC back in August with the 127.0 release. Now, we are happy to say that we have extended that and have stable support for OIDC authentication and authorization. What's more is that this is in place for both web and CLI clients. So check out our documentation and let us know how you like it. This release introduces the beginning of telephony support. As first, we have made it possible to simulate incoming SMS messages. This release also brings you the ability to protect your instances from accidental deletion. If you have a few tens or hundreds of instances and do a bulk cleanup, there may be a couple of instances in there that you didn't mean to delete. So you can use this feature from now on to prevent such accidents. We then have an alternative to Anbox Connect to connect to an EDB share, and we also have released some enhancements to share management. Moving on to diagnostics, the dashboard has a diagnostic facility that helps you download relevant logs and bug reports to troubleshoot when you're having challenges with instances and streaming. The last new feature I will mention is the support for 3 sensors in the streaming SDK. Remember that you will need to enable these explicitly before you can use them. So those are the new features. We also have a couple of deprecations in this release, which include the Anbox Cloud and Anbox Cloud Core bundles, and also the VM images of Anbox Cloud. We are working on things that will provide better functionality than these. And we also have dropped support for AMS Node Controller Charm, as it was deprecated a couple of releases before. And the AMS LXD Charm will take care of installing the node controller going forward. Finally, this release also brings you a number of bug fixes, all of which are available in the Launchpad bug tracker. Now, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues for a demonstration of these features.
Hi, my name is Anusha, and I'm a software engineer working on Anbox Cloud. Today, I'll be demoing a few new features introduced in the 1.28 release, starting with the new authentication and authorization commands in AMC. Previously, we could list, view, delete, and register new identities. The register command has now been replaced by a new create command. This change was made because there are now 2 types of identities that you can create. The first type is OIDC identities, which authenticate using an identity provider such as Auth0, Keycloak, or OriHydra. The second type is TLS identities, which use a trusted client certificate for authentication. Previously, you would add a client certificate to the trust store using commands like AMC config trust, add, list, or remove. These commands are now deprecated. To add a trusted client certificate, you'll now create a TLS identity instead. So let's see how that works. You can start by running the command AMC or identity create, followed by the type of identity. For example, to create an OIDC identity for a user, you specify OIDC / the email ID of the user, which in my case is test@example.com. So this command outputs the ID of the newly created identity. You can view its details by running AMC or identity show, followed by the ID of that identity. This outputs information like the ID, which groups it belongs to, the authentication method, email, when it was created, and last updated. Now to create a TLS identity, you can use the command AMC or identity create, now specifying the type as TLS, / giving it a name, let's call it test, and specifying the path to the certificate. If I list all my identities by running AMC auth identity list, you can see that the two new identities, which are the OIDC and TLS identities that I just created, are listed over here. Now, in Anbox Cloud, permissions are managed through groups. You can create a group, assign permissions to it, and then add identities as members to these groups. Each identity inherits the permissions defined for the groups that it belongs to. To create a new group, run AMC auth group create, followed by the name of that group. Let's call it test new. You can also define a description while creating the group. So let's create another group called test, AMC auth group test. But now I'll also pass the optional description flag and define a description. Let's call it this is test. You can also view more details about a group by running AMC auth show, followed by the name of that, which in my case is test. This outputs information like the name, the description, which is what we have just defined while creating the group, when it was created, updated, which identities belong to this group, which permissions are assigned to this group, which in my case are null, and whether the group is immutable or not. Now, if you want to update a group's description, you can do that by running MC or group set, followed by the name of the group. Let's see, test, followed by the field that you want to update, which is description, and the new value. This is description. Okay, well, the spelling is wrong, but let's just run the command to view more details about that group. And now you'll see that this description has been updated. Okay, so at this stage, you'll also see that this group has no permissions assigned to it. Let's assign permissions to this group. I'm going to start by creating an instance. Let's take a couple of seconds. Okay, and now this gives me an ID for this instance. Now, if I want to assign permissions to the test group to view this instance, I can run AMC auth group permission add, followed by the name of the group, which in my case is test, followed by the resource type. So currently I'm defining permissions for the resource type instance, followed by the ID or that name for that specific resource. So I'm going to paste the ID of the instance that I just created, and followed by the permissions flag. Lastly, I'll define a comma-separated list of permissions that I want to give. So let's give it the permissions can view and also can edit. Okay, so now if I run the command AMC auth show test, you see that this permission has now been added to this group. So it has the entitlement can view on instance with this ID, and also the entitlement can edit on the instance with this ID. Now you can also delete permissions that have already been assigned to the group by running AMC or permission. But now instead of saying add, you will specify delete, followed by the group name, which is test, followed by the resource type, which is instance, and the ID of that resource type, which is the instance ID. And then when I specify the permissions flag, I'll also specify the list of permissions which I want to delete. So I just want to remove the can edit permission. Now if I view more details about that group, you'll see that it only has the permission to view that instance, and the can edit permission has now been deleted. Now another thing that you'll notice here is this group is mutable. That is, immutable is set to false, which just means that you can add or remove permissions and identities to this group at any time. However, there is one immutable group, which is immutable set to true, that is the admin group. You can view all the groups that are present in EMS by running AMC auth list. So it has the two groups that we just created, which is test and test new, but it also has a group that we haven't created, which is the admin group. So this is present by default, and let's view more details about this. Run AMC auth group show, followed by the name of the group, which is admin. Now, as you can see here, this has the admin entitlement on the resource server AMS. This means that any identity added to this group has all the available permissions in Anbox. Now, you can add or remove identities from the admin group, but you cannot modify its permissions or even delete the admin group itself. Also, the name admin is reserved, so you cannot create another group with the same name. Now that we've learned how to create identities and groups, add descriptions, add permissions, delete permissions to groups, the final step is to add identities to groups. You can add both TLS and OIDC identities to groups. So to add an identity to a group, you would first need to grab its ID. So let's first list all the identities. So let's say I want to add this identity, which is the OIDC identity with the email test at example.com, to the test group. So I can do that by running AMC or identity add, followed by the identity ID, followed by the group's flag and the name of the group that I want to add it. So now I can also add it to multiple groups at once. So I'll add it to both my groups that I've just created, which is test and test new. Now, if I view the group test, you see that this identity has been added to that group. And if I do the same for test new, you see that although we haven't assigned permissions for it, the identity has been added to that group. Similarly, you can also see which groups the identity belongs to by running AMC auth identity show, followed by the ID, and now you can see it belongs to both the test and test new group. To remove an identity from a group, we can run AMC auth identity group delete, followed by the identity ID, followed by the groups that you want to remove it from. So let's just remove it from the test group. So I'll confirm this change by saying more details, and as you can see now, it just belongs to the test group. Finally, you can also delete groups by running AMC or delete test new, and you can confirm this action. But if the group has one or more identities as members, you must include the false flag. So if I'm deleting the test, since it has identities in it, I would have to pass the false flag. I'll show you how it works without that. So if I say yes, I want to delete it, it will give you an error. But now if I pass the false flag and confirm this action, this group has now been deleted. If I list all the groups again, you'll see that we're just left with the admin group, which, as I said, is immutable, so you cannot delete this group. And that's all for the new commands in AMC. Up next, we've introduced two new pages in the dashboard, the Identities page and the Groups page. You can access both of these from the side navigation under the Permissions section. So let's start with the Identities page. Here you see a table that lists all the available identities in AMS. For each identity, the table displays the name of the identity, the ID, the authentication method, whether it uses TLS or OIDC, the number of groups that the identity belongs to, the subcluster that it's a part of, and finally a few actions like manage group or delete the identity. Now, if you take a look at the test@example.com identity, notice that it has a U tag displayed over here. This basically indicates that this is the currently logged in user. If you want to update the group membership for an identity, you can click either the groups count or click on the manage groups action. This will open a side panel which lists all the available groups in AMS in the subcluster that the identity belongs to. Now, the groups that this identity already belongs to are pre-selected and sorted to the top. You can update the identity's group membership by either deselecting groups or selecting new groups. As in when you make changes, this blue modified icon will show up to help you keep a track of the changes that you've made. You can also search for any group that you like if you have a very long list of groups. For example, if I search for test, all the groups matching that string will show up here. If I search for something like testers and no groups exist matching this string, then this list will reflect that. You can also clear your search string. So now I've made 3 changes. I've removed it from 2 groups, added it to 1 group. I'm going to click on Save Changes. Here you see a confirmation modal, which basically summarizes all the changes. So we've added the test2@example.com identity to 1 new group and removed it from 2 groups. So I can click on Confirm Changes. And as you can see here, if we see the groups that it's a part of, it now has been updated. Now keep in mind that changing group memberships can affect the permissions an identity has access to. The next action that is available is delete. So you can delete any identity that you want. So let's go ahead and delete this identity. It notifies you that you're modifying its permissions. And now this deletion has been successful. However, self-deletion is not allowed. So the currently logged in user cannot delete itself. Now this page also includes search and filter options. So you can search for identities by name. So let's say I want to see the identity with the name Nusha. You can also search for an identity with its ID. Next, you can also filter identities based on their authentication method. So if I click on TLS, it only shows me the TLS identities. If I click on OIDC, it only shows me the OIDC based identities. And you can also combine these filter and search options. If you have multiple subclusters configured, you'll also see a filter chip to view identities by subcluster. However, for the demo purpose, I do not have multiple subclusters, so you do not see this. Let's move on to the groups page. Now this page lists all existing groups in a table, showing the group name, the description, the number of identities in each group, the subcluster that it belongs to, and actions such as view details about a group or delete a group. When you view more details about any specific group, you see that its name cannot be changed after creation. You see the description and some other additional metadata, such as whether it is immutable or not, when it was created, and when it was last modified. You can also view the identities that belong to this group. And currently, as you can see, none of these identities have been selected. Now, in this release, modifying group memberships must be done via the CLI using AMC. So you cannot modify identities group membership here. You could definitely do it on the identities page, but not on the groups page just as yet. And if you want to add permissions to a group, you would also have to do that using AMC in the CLI. Now, you can modify the description. So if I want to update this description and remove the description word, you can click on Save. And now you see that has been updated. You can, however, create new groups directly from the dashboard by clicking the Create Group button here. So let's create a group called Group 2. Let's pass a description. Group 2 description. And now I'll click Create Group. As you can see, this has now been created. You can also search for groups by name or description. So let's see the groups matching the string test. So these two groups match the search string based on their name, but this group matches the search string based on the description. And you can also delete groups. So if I want to delete the group that I just created, click on that. Now, since this is a destructive action which modifies permissions for identities belonging to that group, you will have to pass in this confirmation string. So luckily I have it here. And click on permanently delete group. And now that group has been deleted. Lastly, you can also sort the columns. So you can sort columns alphabetically. You can sort it to see which has the highest number of identities, least number of identities. You can also sort the description. And the same also applies to the identities page. So this wraps up what's new in authentication and authorization in the dashboard. We've also introduced a new diagnostics button to help you troubleshoot any connection issues that you might have. So if you're experiencing any problems while setting up WebRTC connections, or if your instance or stream isn't working as expected, you can simply click the bug report button. So this button is available on two different pages. First, it's available on the stream page. Here you'll find the bug report button nested within the actions menu. So let's go ahead and download the bug report. Okay, now that the download is complete, let's open it up. I already have my report open. So the report that you download from the stream page includes a set of files bundled together. Inside you'll find several useful files like the Anbox bug report zip file, which when you extract, contains logs and other metrics data. The other file is the dashboard metadata, which is stored in a JSON file. So this file contains information such as the dashboard version, the session ID, and the instance details of the instance that you were just streaming. You also have the WebRTC connection event logs. So this file tracks all the setup and connection events. And finally, you have the WebRTC statistics history file, which is a CSV file that summarizes all the aggregated statistics collected while your stream was running. Now you can also download a similar report from the instances details page. However, there's a slight difference in what's included. So let's go ahead and download that. Okay, now that it's downloaded, I'm going to open that. As you can see over here, this contains a slightly different set of files. In this case, the statistics file and the WebRTC connection events, both specific to the stream, won't be part of the report. Instead, this will only contain the Anbox bug report and the dashboard metadata. So depending on what you're troubleshooting, you can use either report. And if your instance is in an error state and you can't stream that instance, you will have to download the bug report from the instance's details page. And that's a wrap on the new bug report button.
Hello, I'm Michele, a software engineer for Anbox Cloud dashboard. And now I'm going to show you some new features that we added to Anbox Cloud and the dashboard in release 128. The first that I want to show you today is called Instance Delete Protection, or delete lock. It's a feature that allows you to mark an instance to be delete protected, which means that the instance cannot be deleted. And this is specifically useful for cases when you don't want the instance to be accidentally deleted. Like, for example, you are selecting all the instances and there is one instance that you don't want to delete. So if you bulk delete the instances, you want to be very sure that the instances that are important are protected from the deletion. So in this case, for example, let's say that I want to delete the other 5 instances. So I want to use the bulk delete operation, but I want to be extra safe and not delete the instance that I care about. So I go here and I see that it says that 6 instances are selected, but 5 of them will be deleted and 1 of them cannot be deleted, so it will not. Okay, let's see how the instance delete protection can be set. For an instance, it can be set for a new instance that we create instance button. In the capabilities section of the instance creation form, you can enable delete protection. By default, it's disabled, but in case you need it, you can select it from here. Let's go back. Let's see how you can change the delete protection state of an instance. So let's say that I changed my mind. Now I want this instance to be deletable. So I can go here in the instance delete page that you can open from the instance list by clicking on the instance name. There is a new security section that has this checkbox, which shows you if the instance is delete protected. So you can, in this case, you can uncheck it and the delete protection will be disabled for this instance and you can delete it. Let's enable it again and you see that now it's protected again. So this was the instance delete protection that I showed you now. Moving on, I'm going to show you now the ADB share management that we implemented for Anbox dashboard. And this is following an extension of the ADB share API that basically allows you to create many ADB shares, up to 5, and edit them, delete them, and we needed to update the dashboard so that this API was fully integrated. Before in the dashboard, you could only have one ADB share. You could only manage a single ADB share per instance, and this is bound to the connect ADB button that is here for an instances page. For each instance, you have connect ADBs, and if you know how this was working before, basically the first state, the initial state where you don't have any ADB share yet, is the same as before. So there is this model informing you that this is a security critical feature and that you need the Anbox Connect type, even though actually you don't need it anymore, but we'll show that later. And then basically you just need to click the authorized button to create your first ADB share. So now I created the first ADB share, and this is displayed in a table because you can add up to 5 shares. And this one gets created with a default description and a default duration of 12 hours. We can edit both the description, make it a bit more customized. We can edit the date. Let's add one more day. Let's change also the time. Changing the time is something new. Before, you could only change the date from the dashboard, but now you can select the time up to the second. So let's update and you see that all the details have been updated. Then next, you can even create more than one share. You can manage them from here. And usually you get the default description suggested. Let's change it. Let's just call it my second ADB share and let's give it a duration of 1 week. Let's change the time as well a bit. And now we have 2 shares here. And you can have, as I said before, you can have up to 5 ADB shares. And you can search matching the text in the description. You see that now I'm searching for second, and there is only one. There is also a button to quickly extend the duration by 12 hours. So just in case you see that your share is expiring, you can quickly click this button and give it 12 more hours. Or even if your share has expired again and you want to quickly resurrect it, you can click this button and it will give 12 hours starting from the present time. Okay, now let's also delete. You can delete the share. So you see that it will ask you for a confirmation. Yes, I want to delete it. And now let's see what you can do with this. As usual, the purpose of this is to allow you to establish an ADB connection with the instance. So this will give you the command that you need to copy paste in your terminal to establish a connection. So you copy paste this command, and as usual, now it's telling you that the certificate is self-signed, let's proceed, and this will initiate the connection. Okay, now what's new here is that actually there is an alternative to Anbox Connect that we can use, which is using AMC type. So from 128, we also have AMC Connect. So AMC Connect, and we can put the instance name, and you see that it's doing exactly the same as the Anbox Connect. So if you say yes to the self-signed certificate, it will connect you. It will create an ADB connection to the instance. And you can put the name, you can put also the instance ID to connect to the instance. Yeah, engine. Okay, and then when you are done and you want to remove all your ADB shares, you can just delete the last ADB share. Now we only have one, so we delete this last ADB share. And we are back to the unshared state. So if we click connect ADB, you see that we are back to the initial state. That's what we added. That's what we implemented for ADB share manager. Okay, the next thing I'll be showing is the enhancement of the instance creation, so that you can actually know if the node that you selected or the cluster that you selected as VM support effectively preventing you from trying to create a VM-based instance on a node or a cluster that doesn't have VM support. So this touches the nodes. So if we move to the nodes page, we see that there are some nodes in this case that have VM support. So first thing, we added this new row on the node details panel, specifying whether the node has VM support. So for example, you can see this node, it's called no VM support. This doesn't have VM support. So what this changes that for example, we go to the images page and we select our default VM image, this one, for example, and we want to create an instance from this. Now we have select, so this pre-selects the VM type for the image, and on this subcluster, there is at least one node which has VM support. So we can customize the node selection in the configuration section of the instance creation folder. By default, auto placement is selected, which means that AMS will automatically pick the best node. So in this case, this means that in this subcluster, there is at least one node that supports VM-based instances. Now, if we change it, for example, you see that there is a no VM support node here. We get a validation error saying that the VM support is not available on this node. If then we manually change it and select another node, then the error goes away, meaning that this node supports VM-based instances. Okay, so let's now change the cluster. Let's select this other cluster, which you can immediately see that, okay, select auto placement. Even with auto placement, we have this error. So this means that no node on this subcluster has VM support. So it doesn't matter what we select here, it will still give us the error, and it will effectively prevent us from creating the instance when there is no VM support on the node or the whole cluster. And this applies also to the applications. So if you create an application, you cannot select the node, but you can select the subcluster more than one. In this case, we have more than one, and select a VM image. In this case, we get no error, which means that the subcluster that we selected has at least one node with VM support. But if we change to a different subcluster, in this case, it's a subcluster that doesn't have any node with VM support, you see that we get the validation error saying that there is no node supporting VMs on this cluster. We cannot create the application. And this was the addition about VM support for nodes, which improves our creation flows for both applications and instances.
Hello everyone, I'm Gary Wong, a software engineer from the Anbox Cloud team. In this video, I'd like to introduce the sensor support. A new feature will be added into the Anbox Streaming JS SDK as part of the Anbox Cloud 1.28.0 release. By default, the sensor support is disabled in the Anbox Streaming JS SDK. To use it, you need to explicitly enable the sensors you want to use in your web client. As of now, the JS SDK integrates support three types of the sensors: accelerometer, gather scope, and orientations. Next, before launching an instance, make sure you're using the 128.0 images. To verify that, run AIM's images show with the image name. And check the remote IDs. It should start with the 128.0s. Once it's confirmed, launch your streamable instance. Once the instance is up and running, join the session from your client. Open the sensor testing applications inside of the Android container, and you will be able to observe the real-time sensor data stream directly from your device to the container.